Good morning. Welcome into Hurrdat Sports Radio here on AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla here on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube, as well as from the Pillar Exterior Stage. Heard a lot of golf in that intro there.
Was there golf this weekend?
I think there was a tournament that some people are pretty tuned into.
I would say it certainly didn't help.
No, it didn't help. It didn't help at
A little
all.
anticlimactic on Sunday.
Is that Dottie? Some of that is
That was Dottie.
Some of that is old Scotty's personality.
Yeah,
I mean, he makes Dustin Johnson look squirrely.
it's real even keeled.
Dustin Johnson
just-
has the coolest walk on the tour.
Just
I mean, everything is okay for old DJ, and old Scheffler makes Dustin Johnson look loosey goosey.
yeah, it makes him look like Danny Hurley.
60 seconds
That
in,
might
and
help.
we somehow get a Hurley reference.
Well, you got to, right? Well, it's just the one that came to mind in
Yeah.
terms of people that are a little unhinged. But no, it was a little,
I love listen. I've been listening to Coach Hurley, Danny Hurley, a lot.
little anticlimactic on a Sunday, but the old Scotty had a little drama on Saturday. Had a little rough stretch there, and then bounced right back.
Well, at least he showed you so they showed a bounce back stat, what he does after he bogeys a hole.
Well, because he had what? He had bogey, double bogey, and then another bogey within 8 holes on Saturday.
And his ability to not let that,
yeah,
unlike we saw with Morikawa
yeah.
after 8 yesterday, who never really recovered.
No, because he was right there with him.
Yeah, and it turned out to be a 3-stroke lead. Right, you
Mhm.
went from tied. Scheffler rolled in the bird,
Mhm.
went to -8, and Colin had the little 6-footer coming back after the bad chip. Ooh, the sandy. Ooh, it's a weird feeling when you see a pro at that level have a ball come right back to
Do
their
stuff
feet.
that we do.
Yeah, and it's like, and then he flew it a little long, and before you know it, it's a 3-stroke lead,
Mm-hmm.
and you still have 9 to play. But then Scheffler birdied 9 and goes to 9 under, and then you feel like, all right, I got to make a move. This dude is not going to make a mistake if I'm going to run him down. Or do you just play for second?
Well, I think there's
Because he got aggressive.
He
Obviously,
did.
Colin did.
which I appreciate, right? You don't really talk about a killer instinct in golf that much,
Mhm.
but it's something we talked about with Tiger because you just weren't running him down on a Sunday. And I think that's honestly a little bit what we saw from Scheffler yesterday, where he saw the opening with Morikawa and just went from tied 1-stroke lead to okay, I've got an opportunity to put my foot down on this guy's throat for a second here. And that kind of forced Colin to try and do some things that were probably, I mean, he said it in the post round. I always want to say
In the
post-
cabin?
I was going to say in the post game. It's not really, but in the post round kind of interview where he just goes, yeah, I got greedy there, which, I think he had to. Like, if you were going to try and win.
I think the only thing that really made that interesting is if Homa could putt.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, maybe you're cheering for Ludwig. And
Which, I mean, for a first major appearance, incredible.
You quietly were like, ooh, stay out of the water, stay out of the water, stay out of the water. You're like, oh. But he kind of recovered. But that was the stretch you thought he could maybe make a little run.
Yeah, make a little noise there.
Yeah, but, I mean, a lot of that is just Scheffler's his personality. Like, he makes it seem he caters to the whole uneventful thing, doesn't he?
But if you're a competitor,
Just him walking around, it's like, this guy's got it under control.
That's how you want it, though, right? You want it to be uneventful. Like, if you're in that,
if you're him, if you're watching,
no. But if you're him in that situation, I get it doesn't make for good TV, but if you're him in that situation, that's exactly how you want it to play out. Is you've got an opportunity, you seize the opportunity, and then it's just over, right? Like, that's, I think other athletes would be thrilled if they had that level of ability to just close the door on somebody in that instance.
So it's interesting, and you probably know this off the top of your head just because I'm sure it came up and I get it that the Corn Ferry Tour Player of the Year, Monty List winner in the PGA for I don't know how many years in a row, maybe 3.
3, I think.
9 tour wins. I mean, some ridiculous stats, right? He was plus 325 to win the thing. Next closest was 1,000, which remind me to come back to for a second.
Yeah,
in a second. But would you now? Maybe I'm being greedy.
Okay.
But this is a little bit of the Koepka kind of Tiger, maybe even Rory to some degree. Not to say that I haven't seen this before, but does the talk and the heap of praise of Scheffler, and it's well earned, does it fit the number of majors he's won?
No, because it's just the 2, right?
And it's just at Augusta. And I say that knowing full well what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Not just Augusta or just 2 majors when you've only been on tour for 6 years.
Yeah.
I think he's either 2017, 2018.
Yeah.
Does his prowess seem like, or is he just that consistent with the 9 tour wins and the 2 majors? So the 1 major twice.
Yes.
Does it seem like it fits the or because he's dominant?
Yes. It kind of.
Are you understand what I'm saying?
I 100% understand what you're saying, and I think it's Tiger's fault. I think
we've seen some other young gun runs like this in a 6-year stretch, though, with 2 majors, right? So it's like,
but I don't know how many have we seen with more than 2. And off the top of my head, I don't know.
Yeah, you're probably right. Because he's got a couple. I know he has a couple seconds. He may have 4 second place finishes at majors.
He's pretty much always top 5.
So tied for 2 second twice. He's got a tied for second twice. So maybe that's it. But go ahead.
In golf, you can make a great living getting second place.
Oh,
in golf, you can make
one of Jack's gaudier statistics is the amount of times he finished second.
Yeah,
like I'm with you.
Yeah,
I'm with you. There's something to be said.
To be said about getting second place,
especially now. You can make a great living just making cuts.
Yeah, so he's tied. He's been tied for second.
Yeah,
in the Open and the Open and maybe both Opens. Maybe the Open and the U.S. Open.
Yeah, I think that's right.
I don't know though. If you like you said though, do you play for just second? I mean, because that course
PGA
there.
Championship, he tied for second.
That course there. I mean, if you go and you try to I mean, you kind of saw it on Saturday. There was a little bit of drama on Saturday. You had
tied for 8th in the Open.
You had 5-6 guys tied for first place at 6 under.
Mm-hmm.
And
you're like, guys, this is a pretty sweet leaderboard.
Yeah, this is pretty sweet.
Yeah. And they thinned out like in a hurry.
Early Sunday,
and they tried to start making
moves.
A
little fun.
Yeah,
and they tried to start making moves, and it just crumbled on a lot of guys.
So what I was going to ask you to come back to is we saw a lot of guys get the benefit of the doubt with the early odds, right? The Spieths, the McIlroys.
Yeah, there's a couple guys that
get the benefit because of the course, and we asked
the name in the course.
Yeah, we asked. Who was our expert last week, Shane? That we always talk to.
Ryan Ballingy.
Ballingy,
yeah,
right? Like, yeah, because perhaps of all the majors, you only play it once, and it's on the rotation every year. Like familiarity with the course matters, but almost none of those guys played well.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well,
they got the benefit of the doubt. I mean,
you had a half dozen guys that didn't even make the cut that should have made the cut.
Spieth had the 3rd highest odds going into that thing. 4th, if you count the ties. Like there were a couple 10-to-1s, a couple 11-to-1s. He was right there at 20-to-1.
Yeah. Yeah. Which is
Justin Thomas gets the benefit of, like, some of these guys get the benefit of the doubt.
Some of these guys haven't been
playing well
for a while.
Yeah, stay away from Jordan. Don't don't put your money on Jordan.
Pretty much a cause for concern
for Jordan. Yeah.
Yeah, because he's way in the wrong direction.
Treading in the wrong direction for a minute now.
It's just interesting.
Yeah, I was trying to find Spieth's. I was trying to find his Masters result or his majors results. Not Spieth, Scheffler's majors results because I'm trying to.
Well, I know a couple off the top, right? So Like I know he's got he's got the PGA Championship. He tied for second. The Open Championship. He's tied for second. He tied for 8th. And which one am I missing? I said the other two. So the U.S. Open, he was tied for second. The Open,
So
British,
yeah.
he's tied for 8th.
So PGA, and then
So he's got top twos, and he's got top twos in the PGA and the U.S. Open. He's got a top 10 in the Open, and he's won the Masters twice.
yeah. So I think part of it. So like last year, he went 10th, 2nd, 3rd in Masters, PGA, U.S. Open. The year before 2022, he had first and
He tied for second in the U.S.
tied
Open.
for second. And then he had 3 top 10 finishes in 2021.
So it's the consistency.
So he had 3 top 10s in 2023.
Which is the reason why he's been ranked number 1 for 80 weeks in a row.
Yeah.
He had 3 top 10s in 2023, 3 top 10s in 2021, a top 10 or top 5 in 2020, and then he's got the 2 wins. And so he's in the mix.
Yeah. Does it fit though?
The narrative?
Yeah, because the top 10s, you're like, oh yeah, like the consistent. That's how you get to number 1.
Yeah.
But does it fit the way that we talk about him?
Probably not. But it also, again, I blame Tiger for 2 things, right?
You'd think it would be worse though with Tiger because Tiger was he was winning 1 out of every 4 starts.
No, I know, but that's why I like the
So it's not even that neighborhood.
No. What I think part of it is when we look at majors specifically, we hold people subconsciously or consciously to sort of Tiger standard of his rate of winning those majors, which is not anything that's probably ever going to be replicated in our lives. So that's where one problem is when we're like, oh, he's only won 2, in his 6 years as a pro. And then, but I mean, if you look at, he's only actually started all 4 majors since 2021.
I know.
So we're talking about in 3 years and change, he's gotten 2 majors already. He's gotten 2 second places already. And he's got, I'm going to take out 2020 because he didn't start all 4. He's got 8
top 10s
or 6 top 10s, right? So the level at which he's playing is really, really high and really not that long a period of time. But here's the other problem where it's a Tiger issue is
how many majors did Spieth win in 3 years? 2? I need to look that up. But there's just some guys in recent history where I'm like, oh, I wonder if I'm afraid.
So he won 3 in 3 years.
Yeah.
Basically, he won.
And and he won them dramatically too because he won the British. I mean,
those are the things.
British,
those are he's the
Open.
one. He's the one that got me to think about this question.
So he won he almost won 3.
Listen to what I'm telling you.
Yeah.
Like he had a heck of a 3-year run.
Yeah, so he almost won 3 in 2015. He won the Masters, won U.S. Open, and got second in the PGA. And then he won in the Open Championship in 2017.
So I'm like in my head, and I think we were like this, Shane, because you were with me. Weren't we like the wait and see thing? Because we got into the better than Rory talk at that time
On Spieth?
with Spieth.
Yeah.
And we had these discussions where it was like, whoa, is anybody, but still though, when Rory's going, nobody has the ability to lap the field like McIlroy.
And he just came out of nowhere too.
And we like fell in love, and then bam. We didn't really get with like this with Justin Thomas because wasn't the majors thing, but the consistency for how good all these guys were gonna be next. But Scheffler, I guess.
You know how many tour wins Spieth has since the Open Championship in 2017?
I'll take a guess.
Tour wins.
How many tour wins?
Yeah.
How many tour wins does Spieth have in the last 7 years?
Yep.
Ooh.
4, 6, 8, 12.
They kind of look alike too. Is that McGuire?
That's fine.
It's Dannon.
Is it? Why did I get those two confused? They couldn't be further apart in age. They kind of sound alike though, except Dannon would say yes, sir.
It is not optional.
Let's see. Neither is playing hard as a wide receiver for the young guy. Ooh, better
You better get after
you
it.
better get after it and find something else different to do. I'll go. How many tour? I hate to say none because 7 years is a long time, but I'm gonna go with one.
2.
Okay.
He's got two tour. So like the Spieth thing fell off in a hurry.
Mm.
He had 1 in 2021. So he went 4 years without a win from 17 to 21. He won once in 2021. He won once in 2022. Hasn't won in 2 full years.
So, would the difference between Koepka, who's racked up a ton of majors, and Koepka, did Koepka have 4 and 3?
I'm checking.
Yeah, double check that for me. Because where I'm going with this is Koepka. So maybe you don't even have to go back as far as Tiger. Maybe it's Brooks you go with because Brooks has kind of been this self-labeled. I don't care about the rest of the events. I'm a majors guy.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe that's why we skip over his run because he doesn't have the consistency that Scheffler has in the day-to-day because Scheffler's now up to 9.
You want to hear the craziest Brooks Koepka stat?
I like these because I didn't know we were going to go here. But do you know why I like what you're doing?
Why?
Because it kind of confirms what I think about the Scheffler talk. Because
Yeah.
you're going to tell me something extraordinary.
Yeah. So
Okay, go.
He's got 5 majors
Mhm.
out of how many overall tour wins?
Ooh, another good one. Since when? Give me the year.
Lifetime.
Ooh.
He's got 5 major wins.
I'll go with. Come on, DB. This is gonna sound crazy. I'm gonna go with 9.
It is exactly 9.
Let's go.
He's got 9 tour wins. 5 of them are major.
No big deal.
So maybe that's the difference. Because
He's
we've seen better major runs.
yes, 100%. We haven't seen a ton of better just golf runs.
Yeah.
Like his actual, because he's playing a lot. Scheffler plays way more than Koepka does.
I think that's something that I like too.
That he actually goes out and plays.
He plays.
Yeah, he seems like he actually likes golf, which is a plus in his field of choice. But Koepka has gone. He went 2017 U.S. Open, 2018 U.S. Open, 2018 PGA Championship, 2019 PGA Championship, 2023 PGA Championship. Those are his 5 major wins. He's only got 4 other ones besides that. Two of them are Waste Management.
So I just immediately started thinking, okay, have we seen?
We've definitely
we've seen the majors run
Yeah.
in that short of time. We haven't seen the consistency
No.
in just golf starts. Maybe then you go. I would love to take a peek at maybe Rory.
We'll give Rory
I
a
would
look.
because
I'll give Rory a look.
I do in my head now. This was during some atrocious years for me. So this is like from I think 2008 to 2007 to 2012, where I wasn't paying much attention to anything other than myself.
Not really in your sweet spot there.
Like I don't even want to guess.
So Rory's weird.
Okay.
Because he hasn't won much in a while.
No, I know. I don't think he's won a major since 14. Right?
Yes.
Okay, so he hasn't won a major since 14, but he was the second or third highest favorites to win the Masters this year.
Well, because he still plays reasonably well.
No, I understand.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, and he's one of those guys that typically on weekends when there isn't a ton of pressure, he'll all of a sudden backdoor this thing into like a top 10 finish, and you're like, oh man, Rory's got it. You know
the funny thing about Rory and the Masters though is he's never actually won.
100%.
Like that's the weird. It's weird that he gets as much credit as he does for the Masters.
Wasn't he 10-1?
Yeah,
Rory was 10-1.
He was up there.
2 guys not to put money on: Jordan and Rory.
Right?
Don't do it.
Because
don't do it.
But his best finish was second, which was actually just 2 years ago.
Mhm.
The best he's ever finished. But he's never so he's got 4 majors, but they're all from 2011 to 2014.
Mm.
So he goes 2011 U.S. Open, 2012 PGA Championship, 2014 PGA Championship, 2014 British Open. And that's it. It's been a decade. My dude has not won a major
So is
in
it?
a decade.
Do you feel comfortable?
But he wins like 2 or 3 tournaments every year.
Yeah. Do you feel comfortable by getting on the Scheffler train, or are you just going to enjoy this sample size for what it is?
So I guess
I kind of feel comfortable because I like his demeanor.
what's the train though? Like how, like what am I signing
Well,
up
we're
for?
kind of listen to how he's talked about.
No, you were anointing him for sure. But that's the other place where I blame Tiger. It's kind of the Michael Jordan effect where we're always like, oh,
Looking for the next.
yeah, who's the next guy that's going to go on this crazy run? You know what's really hard to do, as we've seen by all the guys we've just looked up, do it for more than a couple years in a row.
Yeah, well, the easy thing to do is, how about that pitching matchup with Reagan's the other day
Yeah,
with Mets? Was that a 2-1 final?
I think so.
Um,
What did I tell you about my guy Reagan's?
No, I get it. I get it. And he's still got to deal with Seth Lugo and Brady Singer in his own rotation. Although Lugo, I'm not sure he can keep that up. But go Royals. No, not really. What did you just say about?
We're talking about like having to anoint
you know
guy.
why? Because it made me. It made me. By the way, you were low on the purse. You were giving the analogy of Natasha saying like, "Okay, peace out. I got friends." When you're like, "Ravi, I want you to be here for me," and you're like, "Babe, do you know how much the purse is?"
Yeah,
I think you said $2 million.
I think it's like,
it's 3.6.
Yeah, I would say I thought it was just under 4.
It's
which is a tiny purse.
It's 3.6, right?
But that's a really like for the tournaments. That's a really small purse.
And which they're with sponsorships and all the endorsements.
Mm-hmm.
There's so many other distractions for golfers, like just grinding every day, showing up for different events.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's hard for these young guys to want to do for more than 2-3 years in a row.
Yeah,
don't you think?
You're not going to get a guy like Tiger.
Maybe
again.
the most
like how could you
thing
just
about
grind
Tiger.
how could you just grind like that with all that's out there? It'd be hard to do 4 years in a row, 5 years in a row.
Much less Tiger did it for what, a decade basically before the
I mean,
wheels
unless
fell
you're
off.
like Happy Gilmore, you just love collecting checks to buy your mom's house back. It's like
maybe that's the key. The novelty checks keep people happy.
That's
we need more novelty checks in golf. Coming up next, we'll set up the show. We'll have more Hurrdat Sports Radio. We're back here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590 ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. We're live on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube here at the Hurrdat Sports Bar and Grill on the Pillar Exterior stage. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla. And, we were getting into Masters a little bit there. I was a little, I was happy for Scheffler that he was won and didn't have to worry about the wife thing. There was a part of me that wanted him to have to make the decision because I'm a jerk.
I wonder what the total purse was from the books. Because, I was driving down to Mike and I went to, he rode with me to Lincoln on Saturday.
Yeah.
And I was listening. I can't remember what we actually found on the radio. For the longest, 590 wasn't coming in. It was just static. I was like, what is going on?
Which is weird because usually you can get 590 all the way out.
Yeah, but it was nothing. So I knew it was kind of a thing.
Yeah, it was like a technical issue.
I was in Caleb's car, so I was like, maybe it's this dumb car. But no, it was. It's a technical issue because I can't figure out anything in his car. And it's not even that fancy. It's just because it's not mine. It's like I don't know how to.
You get really used to where everything is.
Yeah, and I didn't want to be driving and messing with it, so I'm trying to have Micah help me figure it out. And I can't remember what we settled on the actual show, but it was a lot about golf. And the 4 guys on the panel, maybe it was like ESPN Bet or something like that, because it was an ESPN. It was ESPN's. They have like 4 on satellite or whatever. And most of the guys' tickets. They all had like 4 or 5 tickets left because this was heading into the weekend, right?
Yeah.
And most of them in some way, shape, or form had Scheffler involved.
Yeah.
So, and I imagine that was the majority of the action. Although my guy JB and Ken, he liked Zalatoris the whole time. That's kind of been his guy. I wonder if he had him in a top 10 as a ticket, because he did finish in the
Scheffler
top.
Zalatoris.
Yeah. Because I think he finished even. Was he 10th? I wonder if JB. I'm gonna have to ask him. It's my man JB and KC.
Will Zalatoris was tied for 9th. So
Yeah, he's So I wonder if he had a top 10 ticket, but it's just again another one of those guys that gets the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah.
With that course, but a lot of guys had Scheffler tickets.
Yeah, I think Vegas might take a little bath there.
I don't know though, because isn't golf one of those things where you like to find
value.
you get a little you get a little. Although, so they said this. It's funny you use that word. So they said this, and I was like, how is plus 325 not value? Anytime you get good plus money,
Yeah,
there's value. Now maybe you're pitting it against the field.
Yeah,
That's fine though. That's fine.
Yeah.
I get it. But even when you're that prohibitive of a fave and you're still getting 3-1 on your money, is anybody not doing a deal getting 3-1 on their money?
No, I mean that's
maybe it's
value.
not as good as 20-1, but it's good value. Like, what do you mean?
Well, I mean, this goes to the old saying that comparison is the thief of joy. Comparison also can be the thief of your money. If you
comparison is the thief of joy, that is 2 trillion% true.
Right? But so you're looking at Scotty Scheffler at plus 325, and you don't look at it as,
I'm only getting 3-1 on my money.
You don't look at it as I can go 3-1 on my money. What you look at it as well, the second place guy, I get 10-1 on my money.
Yeah.
That's what you don't look at it in. You're like, I get 700% more of my money if the second favorite wins. That's how people look at it.
I wonder what happened on Saturday mornings with the gates. And because one of the guys that I bet was kind of hot was Homa, but he hates closing time, right? Like
he is not Sonic.
And inevitably the putter, that stick's going to get him. But I bet you a lot of action was on Morikawa.
Oh, probably.
Right, because he's right there.
Yeah, he's in the mix, but he's not going to have the really low odds.
So so maybe that was a shift.
Yeah, I could see that.
But I don't know about taking a bath.
Yeah, I guess I don't know. I would guess
I guess we
that
wait for the final tickets to come in.
I suppose, but I would imagine that a lot of casual fans would have put their money on Scheffler. And that's usually when your uneducated public money hits, that's where Vegas takes a bath, typically.
Yeah.
Now, golf is probably a little different because you have so many different people to spread your money across.
Mm-hmm.
They may never truly, quote unquote, take a bath on golf. But if this were any other sport where the public money was heavy on someone, you probably end up not having a great day if you're Vegas. But we will finish up our Masters talk as we wrap up the show later. We've got John Rathouz.
His career earnings, man, he's almost
Who's
60 mil.
Yeah, he's won 4. He's won 2. They have a couple like signature events every year that are 20 mil a pop, and he's won 2 of those this year.
And man,
that's just a nice weekend's worth of work for $20 million. And I know, he's been working his whole life. I get it, guys.
And didn't he have a good showing at the TPC earlier this year?
He has very few poor showings.
I think the TPC was one of the signature wins that he got. That was one of the $20 million. But we'll talk to John Rathouz. He's a former caddy on the tour. He is currently host of the Quiet Please podcast on the Hurrdat Sports Network. If you need a golf podcast to listen to,
Quiet Please.
We'll wrap up the show with him, so we'll wrap up our Masters conversation at that point as well. But coming up here at 8:00, we've got Sam McKewon, like we always do on Monday morning from the Omaha World-Herald. 8:30, we've got Laura Bird Kuhn, the head coach of your Omaha Supernovas. At 9, one Stephen Montgomery Sipple from Husker Online.
Need to be careful here.
I don't know.
Need to be careful.
We love Sip. He'll be joining us at 9. So that's what we've got coming up on the show. But as you mentioned,
that dirt looks amazing.
Exactly, Sip. You never know what you're going to get out of him. You mentioned Nebraska had a little scrimmage this weekend.
They did.
And we got like a 20-second clip on Twitter.
What was it?
Mostly passing.
Was it? Okay.
Yeah, it was mostly, and it was all 3 guys. A couple dimes from Heinrich.
Which is about right.
Couple nice throws from all 3 guys.
Right. So yeah,
was the 20 seconds.
So if I had to surmise it, that's about right.
All 3 guys had a pretty good day.
Yeah, and I think I'm gonna say this, and I'm gonna leave it right here, and I'm gonna move on.
Okay. Can't promise I'll move on, but you can.
I think anybody that said like will see something or has been somewhere that just talks about one quarterback
Mhm.
is not accurate. Don't listen to anyone that says quarterback X was clearly this, quarterback Y dominated this. Listen, I have yet to see that. And I'm not saying I'm always going to be right,
Mhm.
but I do know that much.
And you have a better idea what you're talking about than most people who are looking
So
at this
I
stuff.
would stay away from the superlative hyperbole.
So let
Because
me
it's been a mixed bag.
let me take
I could see taking bits and pieces from it's been a mixed bag. And now I'm to the point where I can trend. Right. It's not
okay.
right. It's not one this or one that or
Let me ask
it's multiple upon multiple.
let me ask a question, and if you don't feel like answering, that's fine, and I'll move on. At this point, could you envision any of the three guys starting?
Any?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So that's all you need to know
Yes.
in terms of how it's gone so far.
I could. And I could see the rationale if they tried to spin's a bad word. If they tried to explain it that way.
Yeah. Okay. That's all I want. I mean, so that's the explanation, or that's all you need to know in terms of when you say
Like if the season started tomorrow.
Yeah.
100%.
if the 8 or 10 practice, whatever it's been, is I think 8 is all we've had to go on.
Yeah.
Then any of those three guys could start at quarterback.
100. I could see them making the case for any of the aforementioned.
There you go. So
Okay.
that's what you need to know so far about the quarterback position. What I do want to ask, we only have about a minute here, so maybe we'll carry this over into the next segment. I do want to ask you who has surprised you the most compared to what you thought of them coming in?
It's a random
As a random guy
Mhm.
or a random question?
random guy.
Okay.
Probably Ramir Stewart.
Oh, okay.
DB.
That is a random guy.
Well, I mean, just how you framed the question,
Yeah.
right? Like,
No,
From
that's fair.
from what I thought, I would say Ramir Stewart.
Okay. I've got to follow.
I'm no fun, am I? That's why I just pay attention to other things.
No, but I like to hear, because nobody else is talking about Ramir Stewart this morning. I have a follow-up question to that, and then I have a couple other questions, and we'll see how much you want to answer.
Probably none.
That's fine. We'll see what we can do anyway. That's DB. I'm Ravi. Lulla. More Hurrdat Sports Radio coming up next. Wrapping up hour number 1 here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. We're live on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. We're here at the Hurrdat Sports Bar and Grill on the Pillar Exterior stage. Want to remind you about our friends at the Omaha Supernovas. They will be back in action on Saturday here at home. You can go get tickets. That's at the CHI Health Center, 6 p.m. first serve against the San Diego Mojo. Go ahead and go to supernovas.com for your tickets. You can go check out the Omaha Supernovas. Just a few home games left in the regular season, so make sure you go out and support Omaha's professional volleyball franchise at supernovas.com. DB.
Yes, sir.
We were talking about some surprises, some guys that surprised you the most. You gave me Ramir Stewart.
He just kind of came out of nowhere. Nobody talks about him much.
That's
And the coach,
accurate.
he just kind of flashed. I don't know. Yeah, I just there were some things that he's a very willing tackler.
Okay.
So I like that.
Yeah. Guys like to stick their nose in there a little bit.
Yep, that's a good term.
So kind of related-ish question there. Who has been exactly who you thought they were?
To the good or to the bad?
Either way.
Let's
give one of each.
No.
Either way.
Either way.
Okay.
Why would I do that?
Well, I don't know. Got to give it a shot.
Jeez. Exactly who I thought.
Like you came in with a preconceived notion about someone,
Uh,
justified or not, and they've been right exactly where you expected them to be.
Jalen Lloyd.
Okay, I know that one's to the good.
It doesn't.
It is. You've been very pleased with how Jalen. You
And-
said that you thought he was going to be one of the top 3 guys this year.
I got one for you, Mr. Know-It-All. Here's another one. You ready?
Yeah.
Dylan Raiola.
I have no idea what that one means.
Now, how about that? Two people that are exactly who I thought they were.
Okay. I know. I just know you're very high on Jalen Lloyd.
Well, and here's the thing, with whatever evaluations are, like my frame of reference and my starting point typically has things to do with things you cannot see.
Yeah, with how they operate.
Right.
Right.
I was talking to one guy on Saturday about, and I've said this publicly too, about building a Division I athlete. I was talking to one of the parents of a young player.
Okay.
Huge fan of this particular individual. And it took me about 3 minutes to get to anything physical about him.
Sure.
It's just the way, and this is the first time I've ever met these parents.
Mindset, ways wired, way he operates.
Yeah. And things that I can appreciate too, because they have a younger son. There's just a lot that I gravitate towards if I can learn something. So I want to know, like if I see somebody, a guy or gal doing something at a high level, I want to know where that came from, right? Like, ooh, I wonder what the whole nature versus nurture thing was. So sometimes I'm not afraid. I'll be nosy. I'll ask questions. Hey, growing up, like I'm totally, especially, I'm only good in those situations when, like, you have to almost be a stranger. I'm better with strangers
than with people you know.
Than with people I know.
Yeah, because it's easier. I think it's easier to ask things of strangers because you don't actually care what their reaction is in terms of, like,
I'm literally fact finding.
Yeah, you're just
or being complimentary in this instance.
But generally, when you're talking about somebody you know, you're usually not you, just the royal you of people in general are worried about, or at least cognizant about how someone might react to what they're saying. Whereas when it's strangers, you're like, well, I may never talk to this person again. It really doesn't matter.
Yeah. Although sometimes you first impressions will creep up on you. Like,
sure,
you'll leave and you're like, yeah, I bet they thought I was a total weirdo. Or something like that. But it's
how I
okay
lead
because I'm
most
like, I've learned to kind of to deal with people are going to think what they want.
So I'm glad you brought that up because Coach Rule said something on Thursday that's kind of been like eating at my brain a little bit here.
Okay.
And it was like,
it's funny when these things land on your runway.
I've been listening to Coach Hurley, Danny Hurley a lot.
It wasn't that, Shane.
Just the lowlights.
And I think it was kind of a throwaway line, but throwaway in that nobody else paid attention to it. Not that he didn't mean to say it.
Oh, where are you going to take this one?
So he said, kids need adversity to spur them on to drive them, right? And it was part of a bigger answer, right? But that started setting off alarm bells in my head, right? Because there's two things that I firmly believe.
Say that again.
Kids need adversity to spur them on to drive them. So there's two things that I firmly believe.
First of all, do you believe that?
Yes.
Okay.
But there are, I'm gonna get to this. I do think there are guardrails that kind of need, like, I think structured adversity or like monitored adversity is generally the best. But so the reason one of the reasons it's kind of set off alarm bells in my head is because there's a thing that I say sometimes when I meet adults that I don't think function at a real high level. And it's kind of a messed up thing to say, but I go, that person didn't have enough trauma when they were a kid.
So my equivalent, they weren't touched enough as a child.
Yeah. Like I
like you didn't get enough discipline.
Yeah.
is how I like to work.
And I don't even know, like, I don't even think of it in terms of like discipline. It's just like you didn't have enough bad things happen to you that you had to overcome in order to be functional as an adult.
I'm vibing.
Right?
Yep, keep going.
So then I go from there, I go from Coach Rule to this thing that I sort of say snarkily about people that I don't think are functioning at a real high level to there's this Malcolm Gladwell book called David versus Goliath, and he talks about the Blitzkrieg of London in the 40s and the difference between near misses and remote misses. And that's why I talked about the guardrails on the adversity, right? Because a remote miss in that context of London in the 40s when they were getting bombed by the Germans was you were aware of what was happening. Like the bombs were close enough to kind of shake your house, maybe break your windows. And like it was a scary situation, but like you were fine. Your family was fine. It was scary, but you got through it. You got out of it, right? Then there's near misses where maybe the house next to you got blown up. Maybe your house got blown up. Maybe you lost a family member, right? The people, and there's been decades of study on this. The remote miss people end up functioning at a remarkably high level. The near miss people had too much trauma and they end up struggling really badly in general. So that's where I say like the guardrails to the adversity, because you need enough adversity to become a remote miss person. But if you get too much adversity, you become a near miss person where the trauma overtakes you.
Yeah.
And so I agree 100%. Kids need adversity to be able to function at a high level and to drive them and to move them. But there is a breaking point, right? Not to go another Malcolm Gladwell, but there's a tipping point, right? Where if you get too much of the adversity, it kind of ruins you, or it can ruin most people. And I've literally been thinking about that for 4 days.
So I am in complete agreement with that. I don't think it was a throwaway line. I think it goes along in the grand scheme of things. Because this is funny, and I won't even use the players, but then I'll use, maybe I won't use his name, but I'll tell you a particular story real quick, the Cliff Notes version of a guy that is a freshman this year coming on campus. So yeah, I agree with that 100%, because what I say about the coaches clinic and taking it down to the wire and having to be accommodating it seems like kind of a non-issue, right? Oh, big deal, man. They had X amount of coaches.
No, but it's the figure it out mindset.
That's the thing. So, and I said this real time. I go, that is such a microcosm of how he wants his staff to function, right? Like it's not always going to go the way you want it to. And what are you doing in the meantime if the variables get to be too varied? When you're not controlling the controllables, like how do you function? Like what are some real life things? And I think the practical application was that when he would tell that staff, sports staff, hey man, figure it out. And it was stressful. And I think but he's got you though. Like the guardrails there are him and that staff. All right. Up to a certain point, you got to go figure it out. If it gets to be too crazy, hey man, come back and see me. But right now, let's do your job. I trust you. This is what I hired you to do. Those are the guardrails. Same as a player. A player may, a player may not want to show up for practice early in the morning. Hey, I had study table this. I had to do this. I was up late. Hey, all that's cool. I appreciate that. This is the second time you called me. It's too short a notice. I need you at practice. Everybody else isn't changing because you may be a little bit tired. I'm not validating your feelings. I'm just not giving in to what you think the end result should be. I understand you were up late. Study table got you. You got to present. Show up to practice anyway. Everybody else is counting on you. And guess what? The next time you go through this, and you get through it, and we'll talk at 11 the day after practice is over, you'll know that you're better for coming to practice.
Because you know you can do it.
And now that you can do it, you can repeat that, even though it's kind of the remote thing. You're fine. You're a little...
You're a little shaken up by it. You're a little overwhelmed by it.
But the guard
you're actually fine.
What's our culture? This is me supporting you, giving you words of affirmation, and I've dangled the carrot because if you come out of the back end, you won't mind the darkness in the meantime.
And you'll be better for it.
In the long run.
Sam McKewon coming up next. Kicking off hour number 2 here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities, live on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube from the Pillar Exterior stage. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla. We're joined now by Sam McKewon on the Hurrdat Hotline. Sam, how are you this morning?
I'm great. How are you guys today?
Sam, what's up, man? You on the move or are you a little stationary?
I'm stationary this morning.
Nice. Got it
In
all
the
handled.
office.
So the Durham Museum, that was I
Yeah.
caught that. Very, very nice. Now it makes sense about the replicating and can't be replicated thing again. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, thank you for that. It was a really good time, and we liked the team that we put together. And yeah, it was good. It's I think that team's going to end up doing a lot of good things in college too. And so I think we had a good time putting it together.
Sam, as we get about 2 weeks away now from, not even 2 weeks away now from the spring game, they've got a scrimmage under their belt as well. Is there, from what you've heard and from what you've seen, which I know is limited to certain extents, is there a position group that you find is the most competitive on the team?
Good question. I think it's going to be. I mean, I think when you use the word competitive, you could mean a couple of different things. So I think they feel very good that they're going to play quite a few defensive linemen. I don't know that I would describe that as competitive. I think it's probably more cooperative than competitive. But I think they're going to play a lot of defensive linemen. I think it's harder to play more offensive linemen because, defensive linemen, you can get them in there for 9 snaps. That's not always as easy with the offensive line. And so I think there's certainly good competition there for who's going to be on that front line, offensive line, especially interior. So there's some interesting competition there. There's nothing settled at running back. Not really. I mean, I don't think there's anything finalized. Gabe Irvin is still going to get a chance at the job, and he's not really, he hasn't done, I think, a ton. And so you've got a bunch of guys there where you're looking at things. And then, in terms of nature of competition, there's a lot of quarterback. I think everybody feels like Dylan Rail is going to emerge from that group, but everybody's getting an opportunity, So competition can be defined a lot of different ways. Linebacker, I think there's competition there. So I think you can define it a lot of different ways, but there's competition all over the field for that team right now.
Hey, okay, so that got me thinking. That's a good question. I like the way you kind of framed that, and the answer was good, especially with D-line. I think that's spot on. Like the whole competitive thing versus cooperative is a fantastic.
It's a good distinction.
Is a fantastic line of demarcation. Let me ask you this way though: is there a position group, and you can count corners different than safeties? You can keep the second level guys the same. Whatever you want to do to quantify the grouping, even if you want to use wide receivers and tight ends, although maybe you want to separate those guys. What position group do you feel like the bottom is as close to the top when you're looking at position groups?
That's a good question. Well, I mean, again, you define it by, are you going when you go all the way to the bottom, are you going to walk-ons, are you going to
you can you can keep it scholarship guys if you want, although there's a
quarterback.
Okay.
Quarterback.
Now if you're right, wouldn't that be, just think about what you just said. What if you end up being right?
Well, I mean, there's no way that I find it hard to give any other answer before Dylan Rail plays a game. Like, how do you know? Like, how do you know? No, I don't think you know. No.
Oh, I could see. Okay.
The game is played.
Okay.
Like, I don't think how can you be so certain? Like,
okay.
And that's the part I'm trying. I feel like what you're going to have happen, because people have to create and sort of manufacture stories, is you're going to see people really build him up without having any idea what he's done in practice. We're going to watch a spring game. He's probably going to do some good things in that game, and we're going to like what he does, and people are going to run with it. And we don't know. We just don't know. And he could be Adrian Martinez, who had, I thought, a very nice through freshman year. It could be more difficult than that. But the question, like, we can't answer that question until they actually play the game. Do I think he's going to be pretty good? I do. But I don't think it's fair to put a lot of undue pressure on him. So I would say that the bunching is close there because, do I think that Dylan? Yeah, I mean, I think he's going to be pretty good. I think Danny Kaelin could probably go up and do some good things, so probably that area. But if we remove that area from the group.
Because it's weird because there's only one quarterback, and he wasn't even mentioned, that has a conference win.
Right.
Or any starts at all.
Right.
I get it. That's a pretty. I like how you frame the answer because it's you almost can't debate it. Like there's very little pushback, given the if you start with the supposition of we don't know what Real is going to be. We don't even really know. So short of fabricating what we want it to look like, that has to be the answer.
Right. Yeah. So it's a little bit of a tricky answer. If we're going with the scholarship players and we're just kind of looking at that, I think that where their running back competition is right now, you would almost say you've got 5 or 6 guys all competing. And so you've got Quentin Ives, you've got Dante Dowdell, you've got Irvin who's banged up, you have Amir Johnson, you have Emmett Johnson. And I think at this point, any 4 or 5 of those guys could play. It's a lot like 2021 when Ramir Johnson had merged by midseason, but in reality, they cycled through 3 or 4 starters before they got to him. If you remember that season, they had Gabe Irvin, they had Marquise Stepp, they had Jock Yant. They ended up with Ramir Johnson, but that's not where they started. They had Sevion Morrison. He was the number 2 guy for a while. I use the right word here, fear that could happen again. They've got to find a way to get 2 or 3 guys who are really, really, really good.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the reasons I wrote about the NIL thing this morning with Ohio State is Ohio State has, 2 of the, 6 or 7 best running backs in the country. And one of them they had to buy,
That would be Junkins.
Yeah, he's good. He's a really good player. And he chose to go to Ohio State and share carries. It's not going to affect his NFL draft stock. If he had gone to Nebraska, he would not have been dinged because he went to Nebraska by the NFL scouts. He's already, put on tape what he's going to be. He just can't go to the NFL yet because they have a rule. And so what do you choose to do for that final year that you're in school? You're not going to win the Heisman at Ohio State because you're going to share carries with one guy, with another guy, and maybe 2 guys. And so you go there because they're willing to pay you to be there. So he's going to run for, 900, 850, 900 yards this year, and he's going to make $2 or $3 million to do it. And the challenge that Nebraska has, especially in this upcoming reality that we're going to be in, is does Nebraska have enough money to go buy a guy like that, or can they find in the recruiting process the guy that's worth that much money, and then they retain him for maybe less than it costs to go out and buy the free agent college running back? Because Judkins could help any team in the Big Ten, and he's going to the one team that didn't need him because of money.
Hey, let me ask you something, Sam. How do you this is for either one of you. How do you differentiate, like if the bottom is close to the top, right, which is kind of like the basic premise of socialism, and nobody's enamored with socialism,
right?
How do you not settle on or arrive at, well, if there's not a clear-cut this, then it says this about the group, right? Like almost an indictment. Because I think sometimes that's how we feel about the running backs, right? Like, oh, there's no separator, so therefore the position group isn't very good. And it could be something like, well, if everybody's about the same, that could be good as a whole. Like, how do you discern, regardless of the position? Because you may say the same thing about wide receivers. You may say the same thing about tight ends. Like, do you need a difference maker, or do you want quality of depth? And what's the magic? What's the magic marker where you go from, oh, it's a lot of good guys, but no great, to, man, that position group is really strong because there's no drop off?
Good question. I think that, again, referring to the time when you were at Nebraska, what you want is a bunch of different makers, who are, it's a deep group. And you got 4 or 5 guys that could be all conference. They just all happen to play for the same team. The challenge today is that's less likely to happen in the NIL era. They're going to, players are going to spread out unless you have enough money like Ohio State to make it happen. And so, what you really would love to see for Nebraska is a player who emerges, who's really, really good. And then, as Matt Rule talked about last week, a guy stands out and then he brings somebody along with him. There's a player on the roster who elevates his play in order to match the guy who's, broken free. The challenge that I think Nebraska's had is for a variety of reasons, whether it's injuries or other things. They have not been able to have a player at that position who's really broken free for a couple of years. And I know they hoped that Gabe Irvin would be that. He got hurt. That's unfortunate. But, he got hurt. So they didn't have that separator last year. I thought Emmett Johnson was pretty good, but I don't think he was, great. And, so you have these, this is where things are at. Like, I think you want to have difference makers at the position. Simultaneously, you want to have depth. And I feel like Nebraska has some depth, but I don't know that they have an elite player. They might have an elite player at receiver before they have an elite player at running back. And so I guess we'll see. We'll see what happens. I think everybody would like to see that running back position get back to where it had long been, which is a separator for Nebraska football for, 30 years. And it hasn't been probably since Amir Abdullah left the building.
We're talking with Sam McKewon from the Omaha Worl-Herald. Sam, do you think a position can separate Nebraska without anyone at that position really separating themselves? Like, if everybody in the running back room is going for, 4.4 yards per carry pretty consistently, but nobody looks like that one guy that, is going to show up on a Doak Walker watch list or whatever, right? Nobody's going for 1,000 yards, just a bunch of dudes that have good yards per carry and all rush for 500 to 700 yards. Can both of those things be true at the same time?
If you had 3 guys rushing for 700 yards, you'd
have
be
a pretty
really,
good year.
really
Yeah.
good team.
But can you have a group that separates without a guy separating within that group?
I don't know. I suppose you can, but I don't know that that's the scenario that Nebraska finds itself in now. So, yeah, like Georgia has good backs. Again, we're talking like if the question you asked, I'll give you an answer, and the answer is it's possible, but it's possible among teams that are a hell of a lot better than Nebraska's been. And so for Nebraska to get to that level, Nebraska has to get more players who are really good, and they can either develop them and recruit and develop them, or they can, for lack of a better phrase, buy them. And one way or the other, you have to get players who are, all conference players, guys that are going to get drafted. I also wrote in the Rewind today, I don't think anyone from Nebraska is going to get drafted. The most likely player to get drafted may be a long snapper that they got, by the way, through the transfer portal. That's not where Nebraska wants to be. They don't want to be a program where guys don't get drafted and you have your top prospects, your top maybe one of your top playmakers on last year's team is trying to make the NFL as a special teamer. He ran a 4.7 at pro day. That's not what you want.
Mm-hmm.
It's just reality. You want guys that run 4.4s and 4.5s, and Omar Brown did that. He ran a 4.53, which is really good, and he may get a look as a result. But Nebraska just has to get more dynamic all over the field, and that's the player that signed with Nebraska's recruiting class that is the most likely to get drafted in this year is Luke McCaffrey, who played receiver at Rice the last 2 years. And Luke is probably going to be a mid-round pick. And I don't put this now. Maybe Damon has a different perspective. I don't put this on Frost. I think Luke sent mixed messages when he was here about what he wanted to do and what he wanted to be, and I Frost didn't figure it out either. But I don't put it on Frost that he didn't put McCaffrey. He tried putting McCaffrey at receiver, and I think the kid I know McCaffrey went on something and said, they never talked to me about, switching the receiver. They played you at receiver.
Mm-hmm.
What do you mean? They didn't ask you. They put you there.
Well, that was interesting because if they never asked him, then why did he leave?
Well,
I
think.
Do you know what I mean?
I think he wanted to.
It was just weird to put that out there like that, knowing. it could it could potentially leave more questions than answers.
I mean, what do you want them to do? They put you at the position against Maryland in 2019. They're basically telling you, and that's fine. He can do whatever he wants to do and say whatever he wants to say. The reality is these are the kind of things that have stopped Nebraska up. They didn't have a running back in 2019 because Maurice Washington was a grease fire. So Wan'Dale Robinson's playing running back instead of receiver. Luke McCaffrey's hell bent on playing quarterback, even though he's not very good at it, and he ends up at receiver. These are two guys that they could have had at receiver that would have helped Scott keep his job, and they couldn't keep either one of them in the program.
It's interesting, right? That's why I don't like to make sweeping judgments, or I try not to get in my glass house, right? So we're talking about the whole running back thing, and how much is the close being to the top not mean you're mediocre, and what if you could just imagine if Nebraska, and this just goes with my current thinking. I want to revisit the failures, but just imagine if Nebraska had somebody else that they could put in place other than Wan'Dale Robinson to run inside zone for 3 or 4 games during that stretch. If you could just get a serviceable running back to get you 4.5 yards, where you didn't have to play Wan'Dale Robinson so much at running back, the potential trickle-down effect that could have happened, whether he stays, whether that steadies Nebraska's offense, all sorts of things could have happened. But when that opportunity presents itself again in 2024, we better be careful about not being too dismissive if you don't have that clear-cut guy. Sometimes your strength can be in the numbers. You just have to wait and see what it looks like before you get in your feels.
Right. And I think you can, somebody can separate at that particular position. Sometimes it doesn't happen right away. Divine did that midway through the 2018 season. He didn't do it right away. He didn't start right away. The Eel did.
He forced them to play him. And sometimes it's just like that. So that's why it doesn't ruffle my if Coach Rule says, hey, you know what, we want to get, or Thomas, or whomever the coach says, we want to get all 3 quarterbacks ready to play, guess what? They're not smoke blowing to buy time. That's everybody's dream. You want to be able to have options. You don't want to be tied to one particular thing in a power conference like that. It's just, they're not blowing smoke.
I agree. Yeah, I think they need depth at every position. I'm sure they'd love options at every position. It becomes harder in an era where you haven't made a bowl game in 7 years. And so guys aren't sure what they're sticking around for from a win-loss perspective. And then I don't know. I think one of the reasons Damon's talked a lot about 1890 is because there's a clarity of impression from a new AD who doesn't know any of the people running 1890 and doesn't care, that they have to build up that operation very quickly to compete with teams like Ohio State and Oregon, or otherwise those teams are going to run away and hide.
Sam, we got beat by a team at home that had a second option at kicker, and we got beat.
Right.
So I will never be dismissive of depth anywhere on a football field, because you know what? This team that we can't stand right down the road had the stones to trot out a walk-on kicker for a game winner in the diciest of all situations, and they got a dub out of it. So, I want to be very, very clear here. We don't be that group that is too good to think you need depth across the board. You always want options as a coach.
And I think they have that. Like, I think they have options in a lot of places, and certainly operation has helped them to create, depth on the offensive line. I don't think that if one guy gets hurt, they're sunk. And so I think they have depth in certain spots. I'm sure they want more at the receiver spot. So they have depth at running back. I mean, at the end of the last year, Emmett Johnson was getting it done. He wasn't bad after 2 guys had gotten hurt and, other guys had gotten banged up. Emmett Johnson was still there playing football. They felt like they had enough depth last spring that they were comfortable with A.J. Allen leaving. It's just, you want to have somebody who really can stand out. I'm sure they hope that Dante Dowdell, they didn't bring him here to carry it 34 times next year. They want him to be really good. And my understanding is that he has the potential to be that. It's a question of consistency, being asked to be good when last year you weren't asked to do that because Oregon had a couple guys ahead of you. Like all those things, those are the challenges that they have to. And the fact that the number one running back on the team is Gabe Ervin is not really ready. If Ervin were in practice, it might lift Dowdell's game, or if Ervin were more healthy. So, we don't know what Gabe Ervin is going to do. He'll come back. He had some moments last year. We'll see how he does this year. But depth's important. So is outstanding play, like finding guys who are elite.
Sam, is it more important to have options at a position because you worry about, hey, maybe a guy's not playing well or a guy gets injured or whatever, kind of the way we saw it running back or at wide receiver last year? Or is it more important, like we've seen maybe with past coaching staffs, to have options so you're not tied to a guy who isn't about what you want to be about?
I think probably both. I think both circumstances are important.
Yeah.
You want to have depth at every position, and you want to try to develop competition within a group that, again, elevates the rising tide. So if a player starts to separate himself, everybody else gets better too because they see this guy's improving. And
that's where you hope you've recruited. That's where you hope you've recruited guys that's their personality. Because what the last little thing you kind of just threw in there as a throwaway, it might be the most important. Because especially if you're in a program where they're going to try to continue to recruit over you, you better be built where if somebody's setting the benchmark, you're a person that's going to go get it, right? As opposed to, man, I can't believe they just did X, Y, and Z with this guy. I'm in trouble, right? Because you don't want to be around those people,
right?
And you certainly don't want them around your program,
right?
Right?
I think that's very true. So you look, there's two players last year. There's a difference. Miles Farmer left the program. Omar Brown stayed. I think they probably are happy that Omar Brown stayed.
Hey, and you could make the case that that's a fantastic point. You could have made the case that at one point they're in the exact same position. It was all on how they handled it.
Yep.
That's Sam McKewon from the Omaha Worl-Herald. Sam, great stuff. We appreciate it as always. We'll talk to you next week.
Good stuff, Sam.
Bye.
That's Sam McKewon from the Omaha World-Herald.
We get that stuff out of Sam.
Coach Kuhn from the Omaha Supernovas coming up next here on Hurrdat Sports Radio. We're halfway through the show here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. We're live on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube as well. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla. We are joined now by Coach Kuhn of the Omaha Supernovas. Coach, how are you this morning?
Hi there. Good. How are you guys doing?
Good. I tell you, man, I'm kind of jealous. I say this every time we hang up with you. Your voice is built for radio. We may have to do this more often.
Well, it's funny because I love radio. I've been going. At Kansas we had a radio station, A&M we had radio. And actually, I'm good friends with a couple guys here that do what is the Big Party. So I've gone down to their radio. So secretly, it's kind of one of my dream jobs, guys.
Oh shoot! Well, there you go. Keep polishing those vocal cords.
I would say, well, we know
and racking W's. Do both of those.
We
things.
know a guy who might be able to help you out there with the radio situation.
That's amazing.
Coach, obviously you're getting down to the nitty-gritty in terms of the regular season, but before we get into that, I don't think we've talked to you since the championship was announced for being in Omaha. Obviously, that's a thing that you guys want to be a part of, not just kind of hosting. But how exciting is it to know that the inaugural PVF championship is going to be right here at the CHI Health Center?
I mean, the concept is a shout out to the state of Nebraska and just everything this sport means to this area. I mean, we've all said it since we started the league, like this is the epicenter of volleyball. And there are a lot of regions throughout the country that are very saturated with volleyball and really good volleyball. But right now, Nebraska and the way that they show out even our home crowds and the support that we feel as a first-year team. I mean, it's so special, and our players love it. But the community, I mean, shout out to them that we kind of earned the right to host here. So we're excited. I mean, obviously, we have a lot of work to do, and we need to be in it. But we're excited for the sport and that we get to host it here in Omaha.
You're putting yourself in good spot, just 2 games out, and this isn't an Atlanta radio station, but 6 in a row. When you look at how you pull that off, because I like to pick your brain sometimes about, repetitive teams and the nuances and whether it's execution versus strategy, how much you can do over and over. When you get to a number like 6 within this league, is that more about the talent or just being able to set a standard of where you got to beat the teams in this league that you're supposed to be better than? And I know I cringe using that word in sports, right?
Mm-hmm.
Supposed to, but like if you want to separate yourselves at the end to have a chance to play back here in Omaha, you have to kind of start to do those things right about now, don't you?
Right. Yeah, and that's the idea. Like you always want to separate yourself, and that's why I also say in a league this small, there's 17, so the separation is pretty tight. We've kind of set ourselves up early on, but now, I mean, over the course of time, any team, like every team has talent, and so everyone's playing better. And like props to Atlanta. They're coming on right now and they're playing their best volleyball. And it's really just their consistency. They've like kind of settled into their system. They're using the same setter that they started using when they came here and played us the last time. And so they've kind of settled into their offensive system and they found this rhythm. And then it's just execution and how consistent can they compete night to night when they play different teams. And so they've kind of figured that algorithm out with their team and their squad. And so now for them, it'll just be that consistency. And that's what we're all striving for, It's keeping people healthy. It's keeping, like, everyone is locked in. And the thing about the pro league is everyone wants to win. Everyone's competitive. And so then it's like figuring out to win. I said it in the locker room after that match. We have to figure out how to win when it's ugly. Like when shit doesn't seem right. Didn't mean to cuss on the radio.
That's okay. You can say anything once, Coach.
That's amazing. But yeah, I mean, we have to figure it out. Like when we're in that, we have to figure out how to win ugly and make plays. And it's now we have our competitive chemistry, but now it's making plays and finding the way to win. So we'll figure that out. We have a good group.
Is there you look at the standings, and I get it. I don't think. Listen, the top half of the league, even San Diego with a losing record, is 500 or better at home. Mm-hmm. At this stretch in the season, how important is it to be able to win on the road? Like it's usually you want to defend your home turf, and we talked to you about that a couple of weeks ago. But the road records are really starting to set themselves apart as well.
Well, I know, and what's funny is we were winning on the road.
Yep.
We were the opposite.
So when I asked you that, you had a better record on the road.
Right. So, but then we kind of flipped the script, and we knew we had to focus on protecting our home and, building that. And now we need to balance that back out. Now we're hitting the road again. So we need to get back into our other mentality, which it is. It's just, I mean, I don't really think it's a home or away mentality. I think it's a consistency of how you're training, how you're preparing, no matter where you're playing. And that's the difference with pro and this level. It is the ability to lock in and find out what it takes within as individuals and then as a team. I mean, because individuals can play really well, but if you're not playing well as a team, then it's not really going to work in the sport. So it's really finding that balance.
Coach, last one for me before we get you out of here. Your schedule has been a little uneven in the sense of you played, I think, 4 games in 8 days from the end of March to early April, and then you had 9 days off between that match and your last one in Atlanta, and then you got another full week before you return home here on Saturday. How do you kind of manage going from there's really just no consistency in the scheduling and like when you're playing your games? Your preparation for a 9-day layoff versus 4 games in 8 days has to be wildly different, right?
For sure. But I mean, we take advantage of that time for recovery too. Like we've given them time off because we have obviously a wide variety of youth and age and experience, we'll call it, on our team. And so I think any time off and that recovery time is really valuable, especially when you fit and then you're on a grind of like 3 matches in 7 days or whatever it is coming up, because we have that again.
Mhm.
Early May, we have the same thing. And so we kind of look at the big picture and what's best long-term physically, because mentally, that is the challenge. Mentally, it's the execution of game plan. It's making the adjustments in match. I'm not as concerned because I think we've managed it with our performance team. We've managed the load pretty well with this group. And so knock on wood, hopefully that isn't as much of our challenge as much as just locking in and executing.
That is Coach Laura Kuhn, the Omaha Supernovas head coach. Coach, we appreciate your time. As always, good luck on Saturday. And hopefully we see all of our friends out there at CHI Health Center.
Yeah, thank you. You guys have a good one. We'll see you at CHI.
Appreciate it, Coach.
That is Coach Laura Kuhn of the Omaha Storm Supernovas.
Do you feel
Sorry,
like,
I got baseball in the brain. Omaha Supernovas.
Are you reluctant to call her Bird? Because sometimes I want to say that.
So here's why. Yes, I am.
She does have a cool voice.
No, she does. But my wife's kitchen nickname is Bird. It's like all of her people in her kitchen call her Bird, and so I have a hard time.
Okay,
like,
what can you give me the?
So apparently, when she first started on the hotline, it's like real loud in there and stuff, and it's like kind of chaotic. And when she would like yell for stuff, people thought she was like, it sounded like she was like cawing like a bird, and so they started calling her Bird. And out of kitchen nicknames, it's really not bad because those people get a little dicey sometimes.
Oh yeah,
But
yeah.
but so yeah, I have a hard time. Like I think Bird, I think of my wife, and then it's like so it's weird. It's just yeah. So I avoid it. I stick with Coach Kuhn.
I used to watch Bar Rescue and
yeah.
and I'm a huge. I mean, Cooking Channel comes up on my streaming is one of my.
I like
favorites.
the Gordon Ramsay one better, which is that
he's over the top, but that's cool.
Yeah,
I get it.
Yeah.
But I watch like
Was it Kitchen
Diners,
Nightmares?
Drives, all of those
Yeah,
shows, right?
yeah.
So the line stuff back there and the chaos,
It's so chaotic.
is incredible. I asked Verzal because he first of all he made it on time.
Mm-hmm.
He was the reason I got in trouble.
What'd you get in trouble for?
And I forgot this because it is cool and I think they trust me, but you're not supposed to be on your phone
Yeah.
in the stadium.
Yeah.
During.
Yeah.
So, and I had it in front of me. It wasn't in my hand.
Mhm.
And he texts, he's like, "Hey, I'm here. Do I need a pass to get in?" So I voice text. I said, "Hey, hold on." And then I put my phone, and I'm not thinking you're not supposed to be on your phone. It's
Mhm.
just whatever.
Yeah.
And then he asked again. He asked me another question. So I was going to call him. And one of the guys walked around. He's like, "Hey, DB, come on, help me out here. You know better." And I was like, what? So I didn't look at it again. But then he showed up like 20 minutes later. But the whole Cook thing, he can only work around so many people because he didn't go to bed.
Mhm.
He had to have 200 pies in Lincoln
Yeah.
by 11.
Yeah.
So he could only be back there with a certain amount of people because it is controlled chaos.
Oh yeah. It gets a little hectic down there. Luckily, she's in the banquet department now, which is a little better. Not quite as chaotic.
I ain't
but
trying to work with that dude at 2 a.m.
It still has its moments. That's DB. I'm Ravi. We'll wrap up hour number 2 coming up next. Wrapping up hour number 2 here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590 ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities, live on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube. If you've missed anything, go back and get the podcast wherever you get your podcast. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla.
Go back and get the cuss words, Shane.
I don't know what you're talking about. Nobody swears on this.
She
Go
did.
back
She
and get
just-
the shift.
Yeah, she said you got
The
to
shift.
What did she say? You got to get your own shift together.
Shoot, baby, shoot.
She's a big football fan too, right?
Yeah, shift formation,
Yep. You
Movement.
need motion.
pre-snap motion.
Exactly.
Got a lot of
I
49ers,
heard
Kyle
it.
Shanahan
Yep,
stuff going
I
on
heard
there.
it.
One thing that I also don't want you to miss is the Team Jack Live event. That's going to be right here at the Hurrdat Sports Bar and Grill in La Vista. All proceeds from this event are going to Team Jack, and you're going to have an opportunity to see Kenny Bell, Nate Geary, and Amir Abdullah on stage together, and it will all be to benefit Team Jack. You can go to the Hurrdat Sports Bar on Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it. There is a link to get tickets there. You can go and get signed up for Team Jack Live. All proceeds go to the Team Jack Foundation, or you can always go to teamjackfoundation.org to just get involved directly with them there. But I'm excited for that. That's April 26th, the day before the spring game.
Oh.
Team Jack Live.
And it'll be a great event. You can ask those guys tons of questions. Just make sure you come out and support a good cause. It's obviously our favorite place. And you don't even have to call it the Pillar Exteriors stage.
Only when we're here.
Only when we're here.
When we're here.
Where
Although I do think it's on the door now.
Oh, I know.
Yeah, they
like,
got to work.
That was quick. But Nate was there Saturday morning again.
Yeah.
So yeah, because he's finishing up school. So it'd be good to pick his brain because he's somebody that I actually like to. And I sat by myself. I was probably the only one in South. Well, me and Micah, the only one in. I guess that's South. Yeah, South Stadium. But there are some guys that I do like to talk to from time to time, and Nate Gary is definitely one of them. Knows his ball too.
Yeah, you like talking to people that know what they're talking about.
Yeah, like anything else is just like sidebar chatter. But I like Nate sees some flashes to the way that they practice too, especially in like 9-on-7 and like the physical stuff. That I think he's meshing with. A good dude. He's got some grays.
Listen, it happens to the best of us.
Super long hair too. Like that's truly White Snake. He wasn't facing me, and I stuck my hand in his pocket because I thought I saw money.
Yeah.
And like he didn't slap my hand away or nothing. I said, "Hey, give me what's in there." He goes, "You ain't gonna find nothing. Just watch where you're digging." And I was like, "That is such a Nate Gary thing to say." I was like, "This dude is wild," but yeah, good dude.
Let's get to our friend here, out of breath, Brian. He wants to talk a little running backs. We were chatting with Sam
RBs
about the good old RBs here earlier.
That's good. That's
good stuff with Sam.
It was good stuff
for sure. Let's get to the Hurrdat hotline with out of breath Brian. What's going on, bud?
What's going on, fellas?
Well, hello, B. What's up?
What's up? You're gonna like what I had to ask about running back. But before I do, just an interesting question I have. About a pronunciation of something. ELKHORN. Is it Elkhorn as in corn on the cob, or is it elk horn as in the elk's horn? I just want to know. We'll meditate on that and get back to me on that later. Next question. This interesting thing to hit my head today. Off the rack. Running backs. I just wonder. I've been watching the NFL and the culture of running backs, and they're telling me you can find them a dime a dozen. Why we can't find six?
Six?
We can't find like two, but I don't know about six.
What's wrong with you? Hey, listen, this isn't hate running back morning.
We haven't found two yet.
No. I love running backs. I'm being sarcastic. They telling me running backs. You can find them a dime a dozen. They devalue running backs. So now I'm ready to ask the question: have they made people not want to play running back? That now we have a lesser stock of good running backs to choose from because of the devaluing of running back. That's just my question. I mean, it works its way downhill. It's works its way downhill. We can't find six, but you can get them a dime a dozen, is what I heard.
Yeah. So something's got to give.
Can I ask you a question, Brian?
Sure.
Is it possible that the running backs are fine in terms of when you bring them in, but the development and the offensive line and the play calling hasn't been there?
About that.
Man, you can say that all you want, but
I'm asking the question.
Hey, I'm answering your question with what I'm being told. Being told. Look, I don't really know. I'm not a professional.
Even hard
I'm asking the pro.
It's even hard to appreciate locally. Like we had a guy rush for 1,600 yards, and he was an afterthought, and he was totally the key to what we did. So it's like you got every running back. Great running backs don't grow on trees, but I'm being told that you can find them anywhere. They're just laying out there on the street canning. Okay, there's a definite disconnect. I agree with that.
I get what you're saying. I get what
he's saying,
but I also think there is a situational dependence at the position too, right? Like a running back in, let's go back to Denver in the late 90s. It really felt like they could throw anybody out there and it was going to be fine, right? Now, they probably had a really good idea. Now, this is where identity comes in, right? So you have a really good idea of what a running back needs to be able to do to be successful in your system, right? You could use Kyle Shanahan as an example of this. Before they got McCaffrey, they had a kind of a hodgepodge of guys, and it worked out pretty well because he knew exactly what those guys needed to do in order to be successful in his system. That's where you get to the point of they're kind of a dime a dozen, because there's a lot of guys with certain skill sets that if you know what you need, you can plug and play. The problem is, especially at Nebraska, if you don't really have a very specific identity you're searching for at that running back spot, it becomes really hard to be successful, even if you are a talented guy.
So it sounds like we're going to be cleaning house and get rid of some running backs, and we get the ones that identify with the system. I would expect that, going off of your statement.
I mean, maybe. So, I don't know. Maybe. Or maybe there's guys in the room already that they like. I don't know.
Hey, and then the other thing, I do like the little, conversation you had a couple of segments ago. Children need diversity. I like it because I always say something to my kids that y'all need to be happy about parents that you have, if you have them, because you're getting controlled, simulated assistance at life, so you can tie when you face adversity, you have somebody there to assist you, and you get someone to try to help you manage your feelings and emotions to get through those things, to try to make it through the other side. So you guys talk about that a little bit more. I like that subject. And you guys have a great evening.
Thanks, B.
Appreciate you, Brian.
All right, listen, it's revisionist history, so it can kind of sound cool to say, and I was just telling this, there are a couple of parents that have local kids being recruited, and you get to see some parents out and stuff, and even players we're playing against that I like really like. In particular, like guys like Ike Ackerman, right, who was at practice from Central the other day. And I know it's weird that when you see some people that you coach against, you're like, oh man, I like that guy. Like, I'm going to cheer for you, right? I can say good things about whomever, right?
Yeah.
Marion Jackson or Tyson Terry or whatever, right? Just guys we play against that aren't our guys. But why I say that is because what I kind of gravitate towards is what Brian's talking about. When you get young men and sometimes women, if it's a female sport, where you get that those kids can function and not everything has to go right, it's usually a byproduct of what's going on at home, right? I'm going to see this through. I'm not going to take my ball,
good or to the bad,
right?
Honestly.
Oh no, I understand, right? Because real time, you don't get to pick the outcome.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you do it differently. So you're right.
Yeah. Because I know people that have been through really tough upbringings that they're way better for it.
Yeah.
In terms of, as an adult, they're able to function at really high levels. They're able to do all these things, right? But I also know people who have been through it and they've never recovered.
Yeah.
And that's the difference, that near miss versus remote miss we were talking about.
And I could speak to that firsthand because remember, there was this stretch from like last May to September of last year where I was like, ooh, should I go back and get some things? Because if I have to, it's too late.
Sure.
Because I was dealing with the remote versus near when I wanted a desired outcome. Hey, listen, this is what I want. This is what I think should happen with my kid, but I may have to let him go through it and potentially fall on his face.
Yeah, make the wrong choice.
And
or what you perceive as maybe wrong's the wrong.
No, I got to entertain that because selfishly,
what you felt was the wrong choice.
Yeah.
May not have been the wrong choice, but how you felt was
selfishly,
the wrong choice.
It would have been the wrong choice for me.
Yeah. Right? Yeah. But there's a difference there.
But I could also see, like, if there were some other things, I was like, oh, okay, I could see why he picked that. I could see why he picked that.
But there's certain times where you need to let them make the wrong choice.
Yeah.
Because that's the controlled adversity.
And there was a stretch before that year, especially when he was hurt, where it's like, I should have done more. Like, I let him go through this. And yeah, maybe he'll be better for it. I don't know. Like, I'm rolling the dice.
That's the hard part. And I'm not a parent, so I don't have this. But that's the hard part about being a parent or a coach or somebody who cares about the young person, because you want to protect them because you don't know the result. But you're so often doing them a disservice. It's the coddling versus caring, right? It's a fine line. And if you coddle versus care, you're setting them back.
It's very, very difficult real time.
That's
why when I see it,
incredibly hard real time.
I gravitate towards it.
Really good conversation. We're going to continue talking about Nebraska here with Stephen M. Sipple coming up next on Hurrdat Sports Radio. Kicking off hour number 3 here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities, KFOR in Lincoln. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla. We're live on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube, and we're here now at the Pillar Exterior stage talking to our guys, Stephen Marcellus Sipple from Husker Online. Sip, what's going on, bud?
I like Marcellus. That's good.
I was trying to come up with a new one for you that I hadn't done yet.
Good. That was pretty good.
Steve, no peer pressure to answer out loud because I know you're going to say what you want to anyway. But you have to be missing me, right? Like, do you? Okay, that's good because I feel like I always see you in the spring and I haven't yet.
Yeah, what's the deal? Yeah, it was nice when Shane. It's very comforting when I get text from Shane. It feels like the old days.
Comforting. Well, you're just as weird as ever, so that's good, man. How you been, man? You're full-fledged into this thing, couple years almost. No, are you on a 2-year anniversary yet? But how do you like the recruiting world, or that portion of your later life new world?
2-year anniversary. Yeah, we are. I think it's May.
Yeah, it's coming up.
Yeah, good job.
Thank you.
It's not too much different because I did do I worked with beat writers, the Journal Star who were heavily involved in recruiting, namely Brian Christopherson, for a period, and then Parker Gabriel. So I was not. I was in it. I stayed in it. I had to stay in it. Not to the extent that I am now, but I'm not. I mean, Brian Munson doesn't turn to me for recruiting information.
Hey, Steve, what do you think?
What are you hearing?
Very rarely. I mean, there's some cases where I can help, few and far between. But those guys like Brian and Sean and Robin on the basketball side, they're so dialed in that it's sort of remarkable to me. Munson's a veteran. So they handle that. So it's not that much different from that. The answer is it's not all that much different from that standpoint.
So, Sip, I mean, since we're talking a little recruiting here, Nebraska did land a couple of, I presume, wide receivers. I know Jackson Carpenter's listed as an athlete some places over the weekend. You think we're kind of in that stretch where we might start to see a little bit of that summer push we've seen I guess just last year from Coach Rule, where he put in the work on a majority of his class kind of in post-spring, early summer?
Well, yeah, I mean, I do know enough to say that the way it works now is we're probably not in the heart of that period yet. But yeah, I mean, when you get into June, I think it'll start popping because that's when a lot of the commitments happen, a lot of the action's happening in the summertime. We're probably a little early for that. As far as these two latest commits, I'd say that, Brian Munson saw Carpenter coming.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, known about Bryson Hayes, the kid from Mays, Kansas, right outside of Wichita. Those guys, Sean and Brian Munson, had known about him. I think the commitment might have caught him by surprise a little bit. The timing.
It did me just because Kansas State is so good at what they do in terms of how they recruit, and their attention is very specific. They don't recruit a lot of loosey-goosey guys. Like, they kind of zero in, and they got a good process. And I am a little surprised that it was this early because I thought K-State could make it pretty interesting.
Yeah, and KU was a factor. I know
they're good. Hey, they're in the same boat. They do a good job too, Sip.
Yeah, KU definitely wanted him. I know that. KU wants to establish itself in Kansas more. I think KU still has a little trouble getting the hot. I mean, I know Lance, so I'm not speaking totally out of turn here. I think they want to establish themselves more with the high end Kansas kids, and Bryson Hayes would be that. So yeah, those two Kansas schools wanted him badly. Nebraska went in and plucked Bryson Hayes, who's a receiver from KU and Kansas State. They both legitimately recruited him hard.
Mm-hmm. Sip, speaking of getting in on the high end in-state guys, Bryson Hayes is actually the first commitment outside of the state of Nebraska for Nebraska for 2025. I mean, how dramatic has been, you've seen the efforts of Coach Rule and staff, obviously with last year's class, but again this year where 4 out of their 5 commits so far are in-state guys.
Yeah, it's kind of inverse, like the way that usually happens a lot of times. So it started off this way, and I think it's telling. I mean, it's all these decisions. I mean, I try not to, as Damon knows, I try really hard not to paint with a broad brush, because especially with this topic, because these are individual decisions. But you know, like a Caden Vermoss, Caden Vermoss has been committed for a year.
Yeah,
he literally has been committed. I think he almost exactly a year now.
Yeah, we're about a week off, but yeah.
So, and you know, there's other guys in that group that have been committed for some time. Tyson Terry's been committed, I think, since last summer.
Booth has been committed since August. Yeah.
So they are individual decisions, though. But I like it. I mean, obviously I like it. I think I know this. I know because I just got off the phone with Tim Carpenter.
Lockjaw, good dude, great dude.
Dude, I think what you're finding is these Nebraska kids feel very comfortable that this staff is here for the long haul, and that there's just an overall comfort. I know that Tim felt that, and he wanted that as a dad. He wanted to feel like, you know, my son's going to be at Nebraska for a period of time, you know, for 4 or 5 years, and that this is the staff that's going to be with them. And some people probably listen and go, why was that even a question? Well, I don't know. It's always a question, right? In college football to a certain degree. And it's a question the other way too. I'm sure coaches, if like a Nebraska coaching staff members are listening, they think of it the other way. Well, Jackson Carpenter will be with us for 5 years, because a lot of times it's that way. But man, it does. I think with these Nebraska kids, I mean, I'll try to get somewhere with this conversation. With Nebraska kids, they're probably a little more likely to stick, right? And these kids, if you just look at them individually, they seem very likely to stick in the program, which is what Rule wants that, right? He wants to develop players, and that's what these kids be.
Now, I'm going to say this knowing full well that some people aren't going to be able to handle the context, because you're going to hear a 90s reference, but I'm unapologetic when the shoe fits. Whether it's me being recruited at a very competitive position during a competitive time, because remember, Nebraska wasn't quote unquote good yet when they made this run on a lot of in-state guys in the early 90s. They were getting there. They weren't over the top yet, right? People still, relative to their success, were a little reluctant to embrace Coach Osborne as a guy that could win the big one. Mm-hmm. You remember those days, right, Sip?
Absolutely do, yeah.
So as a parent and as a guy that was recruited during that time, there is a couple of similarities. Number one, a lot of local guys are saying yes, even though they're not where some other competitive recruiting teams are, because you're getting the sense you want to be a part of something that's brewing, right? Like it feels like something good is going to happen. I want to get in on this. So there's that part. Then there's the other part from a parent. And I think Timmy feels like this, and I know a couple of other guys do that have legacy guys, whether it's Toby Wright, there's a ton. Booker, this whole cycle has 1,000. You want you're willing to sacrifice a little. Maybe your kid being a star right away or at all or whatever, to be around people that you get the sense they'll be good for them for the long haul.
Okay.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like if ask Dylan, like, or Dom, and you guys have a good relationship. If you're not going to have your son, and he may struggle at times, which all kids do in college, there's certain people you want them around. And you just get the sense that this is a staff you want young men around, because you may get them back. It seems like you'll get them back better than when you left them.
Yeah, that seems like it definitely. And my familiarity is mainly with Coach Rule, and I would definitely say that. And I think you, Damon Benning, would, and I know Tim Carpenter would say, and Tim did say, that he's better off being around Coach Osborne, better off for being around that staff.
Mm-hmm.
He carried that into adulthood. So yeah, exactly right. And I think you're really, I do get the sense that people feel like, I mean, you always say like, oh, the program's headed in the right direction. It's kind of a cliche, but it does feel like there's a lot of good energy now. Is it really?
Do you know? So here's the dirty little thing people don't want to talk about. A lot of times, guys in state either don't like, or don't like is kind of a strong word. Sometimes you don't want to go where other guys are going just because they're going there. Like, that's a real thing in recruiting, especially in state. But you kind of feel compelled, like, I don't want to miss out. Oh, sure, I can get along with player X, Y, and Z now, even though we competed against each other for 4 years, because for the greater good, I don't want to miss out on something good. Like, I kind of feel like it was a lot like that early, right? For as much as I love Clinton, I was like, I don't know, man. Like, do we want to go to the same school? Like, we've been, but you know what I mean? It's just like, did Dish want to do what Ogard did? Like, it's just, it seems like it's the place to be now, and you're willing to put that aside.
Yeah, there's a bigger, like you said, there's a greater good and a bigger picture that takes precedence over your little hang-ups with people, and that's the way it probably should be.
Well, you don't get along at the quarterback spot if you're like, for instance, the practical application would be Kalen and Dylan.
Yeah.
Right? You don't get along as a group or as a competitive group if the culture can't sustain that or doesn't lend itself to that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do. And I think there is, I don't mind, like, I understand when you say culture is a turn-off word to some people. I don't.
If you're immature.
Yeah, it's not a turn-off word to me. And I think that's what we're talking about. The Rule has done a very good job, in my opinion, of quickly establishing culture. It's been pretty quick, right? I mean, we're only in the second, but it's quick, and I think it has to be nowadays, because everything moves quick in college athletics, or at least in college football. There's a lot of transitions, players moving around. So when you bring in, what I'm getting at here is when you bring in like a Jamal Banks for 1 year, your culture kind of has to hit him fast.
Yep.
And he's got to get culture fast.
Yep.
Or the same with Stephon Thompson.
Or how about this one? Sip? How about Mazuka? You better get in line with the culture.
Right. It's kind of fun because you can't. At the same time, I don't, and I've never run a program, but I've been around this program for 30 years. I think you also there has to still be a little leeway. Like, not everybody's going to adopt at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
Adapt at the same time. They're not. People are different. It takes some people longer than others to adapt.
Yep.
There's got to be that leeway. But you know what? That runway has got to be inherently shorter now, just the way things go. But I mean it when I say, I think Rule has like, the Rule way has set in very quickly. You know, you have a good feel. You guys have a good feel for it. I have a good feel for it. So naturally, the players have a very good feel for it.
We're talking with Stephen Mortimer Sipple here on Hurrdat Sports Radio. Sip, this is
Marcella's greater than Mortimer. Just saying.
Well, I'm just I've gone through a lot of them now. I'm trying to get creative.
Next to be dropping Mercutio or something.
I think I did that last week. I think I did do Mercutio last week.
Marcellus.
Yeah, I kind of like Marcellus too.
Yeah, I think Marcellus and Montgomery have been your favorites so far.
Yeah.
I'm gonna keep looking though. That's what I do. I'm a worker, Sip. I'm just gonna keep looking. We talked to Sam McKewon earlier, and I asked him this question. And
Sam of the Omaha Worl-Herald.
I'm curious how you'll interpret it, so I'm gonna leave it a little open-ended. What position do you think is the most competitive this spring?
There's some in there. I would like. I would like. I'm not gonna. I always. Damon knows. I always go to running back. I'm not gonna because there's two guys that can't. You just can't. They can't really be in it. Gabe Irvin and Ramir.
Yeah. He's still Ramir in 2024. When do you think he'll go back to Ramir?
I don't know. It's RAH.
Ra. All right. So Ramir and Gabe, they're out. So you're going to go a different position group.
I would like to go to corner. I mean, the corner opposite Tommy Hill. I guess what we're doing collectively is writing in Tommy Hill starter. But what's the other corner? It's got to be hot. I mean, that's got to be hot. That competition has to be hot.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you don't have to write Tommy Hill in if you don't want to. I'll entertain.
I know one thing. It's demanding.
Yeah, it should be. It should be because it's critical. I think the corner spots will be fine, but I'd like to know who they are for sure. And then it's gonna be hot. I mean, across that secondary, it's hard to say exactly what the competitions look like because you don't know exactly the configuration.
Mm-hmm.
But man, I know this. I mean, if you just look at safeties, I mean, you got Hartzog, you got Gifford, you got Singleton. I mean, not everybody can play, so it's.
Well, those three will, but yeah, you're right. I mean,
you got Marquise Buford.
Yep.
I mean,
good call.
Who's all playing?
Yeah.
It's I'd probably just say secondary overall because there's so many bodies, and I'm not even naming them all. I mean, there's so many. It's one of those things. There's so many that you, off the hook, you kind of forget a few of them that are pretty good. So like Kobe Bretz, where's Kobe Bretz in that comment? I don't know. I mean, I just know they got a lot of talent back there. And you know what? It'll get pretty hot at receiver to get in terms of.
That's where I thought you'd go.
Where's the ball going? I mean, because they have a lot of them now. I don't want to portray this like it's Ohio State. Nebraska's not that. It's just now it's representative of what a Big Ten team should probably look like. And we'll just the competition is for who's getting the most catches there.
Yeah, I could see it easily being a couple surprise guys will hit the portal and we'll have all these opinions, and it could be nothing more than, man, it's just deep. It's just
deep.
It's just deep. There's nothing crazy going on. It's just, wow, I can't believe that. It's like, portal's open now. Let me get at least the last one for me, because I'm beginning to think this is pretty underappreciated, and it's not everybody's fault because they can't always be around it. But one thing that I love is when they talk about practice, it's like not just a word, right? There's something to it, right? Showing up, being able to endure. Coach Rule kind of quietly likes to function in chaos and to see if other people can. How much do you think Nebraska's culture being set so quickly has to do with the fact that he doesn't mind a little hard work, he doesn't mind a little elbow grease? There's something to him that I think he thinks is cool about making people uncomfortable, right? Like he's even hard. You'd agree he's hard on his staff too, right? Like There's
100.
It's amazing. I'm floored at what he asks and how he delivers and disseminates information to his staff. How much of that at the end of the day you think folks can appreciate? Because at least the standard is set.
Yeah, I think people appreciate it. I appreciate it. I mean, here's what I'd say. I always tell people about Rule. He's a hell of a leader. He's a good boss, but I'm not sure I'd want to work for him.
It's hard.
Yeah, I'm demanding.
Like
Very demanding. You know, I don't know.
It's intense. Usually I can. You go and you like to either smell the grass or a little bit of sweat on the pads, or like it has a smell to it. You can feel the intensity. And I'm not saying it lends itself to like wins and losses. What I'm saying is, when you're in a competitive environment, you can, it's in the air. And I think it even starts with the staff.
Oh, I do too. And I do think the win, I do think it, I mean, his track record would suggest that it leads to wins and losses at the college level. I understand the Carolina deal, but yeah, no, it's not for everybody. But if it is for you, it's a great environment. Yeah. And I don't think it's not for me, by the way. I like the environment. I like the way it feels over there. I think that's that's kind of this whole conversation is low level. It's kind of about that. I think we agree that the environment over there there's a lot of promise with the way it is. And I do like, what are we talking about? We're talking about 3 practice fields going. We're talking about kids telling you, yeah, everybody has a shot now. Show what they can do. Kids say that, the players, not all kids, by the way. The players say that. The old coaches say that. They like it. And we're not just talking off the cuff. I mean, I talked to George Darlington on Saturday. They like the way it feels. It's a lot of people that like the way it feels, but it is intense. I mean, that's the word I always use and that's one of the words I would use for Rule's culture.
I mean, when like Ricky Henry and Mike Caputo say, this is what I'm talking about, it feels competitive. I mean, those are 2 pretty mean-spirited, competitive people. They
tackle now. I mean, they tackle a non-tackling game.
Yeah.
It is.
I mean, I was watching Ricky Henry last week, and he's just nodding his head behind his sunglasses in approval. And that definitely was not a fake tough guy. You know what I mean?
Oh God, no. It is football now. It's football. The Rule's a bit of a throwback, and I think that's why he likes it here, because I think people like that here.
Are you surprised that it is as physical as it is? He's willing to let a few bodies. It's not intentional, right? But seemingly go by the wayside.
Yep, he has to be willing for that to happen. Oh, I always am a little surprised, but I go back to hey, it's football. Play football. Kids like it. I think the kids like it. That's the bottom line.
Yeah. That is Stephen Marcuscio Sipple, Husker Online.
You strike me as more of a Malik, Sip. How about Stephen Malik? You want to go with Malik?
I like Malik, Montgomery, or Marcellus. Be one of those.
All right. We'll keep finding it, Sip. We'll keep going. Hey, we appreciate it as always, bud.
All right. God bless you.
More Hurrdat Sports Radio coming up next. We're back here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities, KFOR in Lincoln. You can find us live on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. We're here on the Pillar Exterior stage. But where we were on Friday, DB and I got a chance to go out to Lauritsen Gardens for their Brickosaur Brick Live exhibit. It's over 30 iconic dinosaur sculptures made out of more than 1.5 million bricks, and seeing them, I would have thought it was at least 10 times that number. I would have thought it was 1.5 million bricks.
I would be curious to see if people could guess.
Don't look at this. Don't look at the signs because it tells you. Guess how? Because I would have guessed some of those were 1.5 million bricks per dinosaur. It was phenomenal. The texture, the detail out of those things was unreal.
Do you want to make fun of me for having to touch like a child?
No, I was curious too. I just wasn't going to do it.
I was the only one that did it.
And no, I did after you did, but you kind of gave me.
Let the scapegoat go first.
Yeah, 100%. Once like you did it, I got permission to do it.
I would have been the guy that actually like touched it, and the whole thing would have fell over.
Luckily, it didn't, because that's 1.5 million bricks is a lot to pick up. I wasn't going to do that, but you got through May 12th to get out to Lordson Gardens. It is fun for the whole family. Some might even call it dynamite to go visit there with your family.
And shout out to Mia Copa.
Yeah, Mia hooked us up with a little tour. It was great.
Although it's really Maya.
Yeah. Well,
I said Maya Copa, and you're like, no, it's Mia Copa. And I was like, well, I was just trying to use her first name. And at least she got, now shout out to her too, because she got my sense of humor.
She did.
And of course, our guys from Hurrdat were like, oh my God, we can't take you anywhere. But like, I'm funny. It's okay. I don't get out much.
You go to lordsongardens.org to get your tickets. You can be amazed, but don't touch the sculptures like DB did. That's
or get the itch to want to go get it in the pond with the koi.
Yeah, you were fascinated by those koi.
They were huge.
But make sure you go check it out. It's super cool. That's Brickosaurs at Brick Live at Lordson Gardens.
I didn't know you could eat there either.
Yeah, they got like a little food area. They got like a little.
I looked at the dirty plates that were stacking up with the.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, I wonder what that was. So then I was, of course, entertained by.
Well, sure.
Trying to guess what.
Trying to figure out what people were eating.
Yeah.
Kind of the cool thing. This is what we learned when we went there. Was the plants that they have around the exhibit were either same species or like descendants of the species that were around with the dinosaurs. That was crazy stuff.
Mm-hmm.
That's how you kind of get it in with the plant life that survived what the dinosaurs couldn't.
Yeah,
little punk dinosaurs couldn't hack it, but the plants could.
Man, I made it.
You made it.
Yeah, I officially have. I can function around other adults in public and spaces I'm not accustomed to being. Do you think they got some footage, the B-roll of the two older or more mature ladies that were like,
that's Damon Benning?
I couldn't believe that.
We're walking in, right? Trying to get our little intro done. So we did a video. I'm sure it'll be out on socials soon here because our guys, Kyle and Colin, were killing it. But
how about Kyle? He's like, God, you're like this all the time, aren't you? It's not just the show. I'm like, not all the time, but like when I'm comfortable.
Yeah, a lot of it. No, it was. So we're walking in, we're trying to film this thing, and a couple of ladies go, that's Damon Benning.
And I had to wait because the camera was rolling.
And then you went back and said hi.
And I yelled. I was like, hey, ladies, thanks for saying hi. And like everybody in between us and them, like waved back. I was like, no, not you two. Or no,
these over here, actually.
Those
not
two
talking
ladies
to
way over there.
I'm not talking to you.
Kyle was like, oh, God.
What are we about to deal with here?
A child.
It is a great place to bring your kids, though.
Oh, for sure.
Absolutely.
And why weren't they in school? Like, what was going on, do you think?
I think there were some field trips there.
Had to.
Like, I saw some school buses out in the other parking lot.
Hey, how about my little dude getting it in with those big old duplex blocks? Like, what was he doing outside?
He was locked. He's like, I can make one of these dinosaurs. Let's go. No, it was a lot of fun, though. And you should definitely get out there to Lordson Gardens. Check that out between now and May 12th. I wanted to get back to something that Sip said, though, because
Sip's a lot in there.
He did, because he said he was talking about it not being for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
And when you can come to a place, I mean, as an individual or as a program or whatever, but when you can get to a place where you can say, hey, this isn't going to be for everybody, and that's okay, it gives you a ton of freedom to operate. Because now some people use it as an excuse to be an a-hole, and you got to watch out for those people. But what it does, at least what it did for me, because I kind of went through this journey personally, was, and I think it's honestly one of the struggles that Nebraska's gone through, is wanting to be for everyone. Not every 4-star that's interested is going to be for you. Not a good fit, right? We saw that in early Frost days for sure. We saw it in Riley, which with all the Calabrasca kids that were here like 6 months and then peaced out. We've seen it with the Florida kids, that there was this huge track record. Oh, nobody from Florida wants to stay here. Well, it's like maybe you're not recruiting the right kid from Florida, right? You have to understand, and you have to be okay with the fact, whether you're an individual, whether you're a football program, whether you're in your profession, whatever, of saying, hey, I mean, we get it a lot, right? Because we get very public feedback on our jobs, right? Whether it's Twitter, I mean, you can leave reviews on whatever, right? On podcasts.
Yeah, it's not for everybody.
Like, if I hadn't like gone to therapy and gotten to a place where I'm like, hey, I'm not going to be for everybody, but the people that like me are really going to like me, and the people that don't, they probably weren't ever going to like me anyway. When you can get to that place as a person or a football program, it gives you so much freedom to A, be you, and B, succeed and sustain long term.
So, and I think for anybody that this is what they're looking for, and I'm not here to do a recruiting pitch, but I will say what works, what I think has worked for a lot of people is, number one, I think you're gonna be around some people that obviously have your best interest at heart. But number two, if you're a parent that wants your kids to be in a situation where you get to eat what you kill, that's the environment. This is the environment for you, because for all, and I heard this all along, right? Oh, you're taking too long, or they have this person and that person. I'm like, oh, I think we know what we're doing, but I appreciate that, whatever, right? And some of it was stressful real time, so don't let me sit here and kid you that it wasn't. At the end of the day, what I felt like I could rest in was, and I've said this out loud, people think I'm crazy because it may actually include your own kid, but if you're creating an environment where it's survival of the fittest, and it's about showing up and not just going through quote unquote practice, and you're going to thin the herd, that's what I want, because that's what I think that's what he can thrive in. I think that's what he wants. Selfishly, as a dad, I think that's ultimately how life is.
That's that adversity, right?
Right, like
that adversity we're talking about.
I like that's probably like not everybody's gonna make it, and it's gonna be too hard for some people.
Not everybody's built that way,
and that's okay.
Yeah.
Hey,
it's not for everyone.
Easier to get to the top.
Not for everyone.
And it's the difference between simple and easy, because I think it's easy because that's the conditions in which we only know really one way in our household, and sometimes it's not always fun or looks functional from the outside, because it is
can get a little messy.
It is competitive, and feelings get hurt too.
Sure.
Right. So, but that's the thing that I think I like, and I love it even more because I've seen it now in some practical applications at practice. It's not just player to coach. It's coach to coach too. It's coach to support staff. It's not for everybody, man. And there's such a standard.
Yeah.
It's like daily going through a colander.
Just strain it out.
And strain it out. And you gotta hear my heart real quick, because it's the same thing that I gravitate towards that I like, because it helped me get through some pretty dark times. Because I am competitive at the end of the day. It's nothing that I would openly pick to go back to, because I don't want to have to be on all the time.
But you needed it.
But I needed it.
Yeah.
I 100% needed it.
I'm glad you brought up simple versus easy, because here's what I think people mistake. They want something simple, something they understand, something they know. Hey, if I do X, I get Y. They mistake that for what's easy, because the simple things could be really, really hard. But what we crave isn't easy. What we crave is structure. We crave knowing what is asked of us, and people confuse the simple, which is important but can be difficult, for the easy, which isn't going to make you any better. Coming up next, we're going to talk to John Rathouz. He's a former caddy and host of Quiet Please to wrap up the Masters. Wrapping up the show here on a Monday on Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities, KFOR in Lincoln. That's TV. I'm Ravi. Lulla on the Pillar Exterior stage, and we're brought to you by Warhorse Sportsbook. Make sure you get to the casino in Lincoln or to Horseman's Park in Omaha. It's the best place in Nebraska to place your bets. Maybe made a little bit of money on our guy Scotty Scheffler on the Masters. Maybe made a little bit of money on UFC 300. You can bet on pretty much every major sporting event at Warhorse Sportsbook. So make sure you get to the casino in Lincoln or to Horseman's Park in Omaha. If you've got questions, go to warhorsecasino.com/sportsbook for a full list of details and house rules. That's Warhorse Sportsbook. No bets, no glory. Joining us now on the Hurrdat Hotline is John Rathouz. He is a former caddy, and he's the host of the Quiet Please podcast right here on Hurrdat Sports. John, how are you this morning?
I'm good. Thanks for having me on, Ravi and Damon.
JR, how are things, man? Were you one of those guys that took or is laundering money through Vegas, man? Everybody's talking about value, 3-1, man. Scheffler, easier pick since the days of Tiger than riding Sheff in this one.
Unbelievable. Yeah, I saw some people posting their bets out there, but yeah, I mean, it was like betting a football game with him this week, and he came through for people. Not quite as cool as when you hit that long shot, but man, was he solid.
Man, so let's start with Scheffler. A little anticlimactic by the end, but he had to do a lot of work on Saturday when he kind of ran into that stretch where he hits a couple bogeys and a double in the middle of his third round. How impressed were you with his ability to bounce back real time, to get himself back in position on Saturday, and then kind of slow bleed that thing out on Sunday to a pretty comfortable win?
Yeah, so really impressive with him always. I mean, not as surprising these days because we've just seen him so many times now and he's so consistent. But he does like lead the PGA Tour in that bounce back stat, which is always a fun stat. You know, you make a bogey, you come back with, you know, a birdie or better. And he did that, you know, on the biggest stage. So, you know, just so impressive with how consistent he is. You know, he just is just this like great illustration of a top athlete where he just kind of stays in the moment, doesn't let his emotions get the best of him. He's got a phenomenal caddy on the bag, and Ted Scott, obviously, he's got the blueprint on that place from caddying with Bubba Watson and other guys, and they are really hard to beat out there, especially the way that Scheffler's playing right now. So, yeah, that was impressive. Just the entire week was just like, you know, such a crazy week of weather. And then, you know, obviously he had that added stress of his wife at home. Is she going to give birth? And so, I mean, you put all that thing together. It wasn't the most climactic of Masters, that's for sure. But I think in his camp, it was a pretty darn good win.
Maybe there's not necessarily a lesson to learn, but are we kind of over, especially with some guys that struggled or didn't make the cut, of the familiarity of Augusta being an advantage when it comes to odds? Because a lot of guys were getting the benefit of the doubt towards the short odds in Vegas and either hadn't played real well or haven't played well in such a long time, but advantage Augusta and familiarity when it comes to odds makers.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I mean, I think, you know, advantage is experience is always an advantage there. But then obviously it's got to mesh with form, right? So that's kind of always the tricky thing. Like if a guy has great experience, but he comes in with kind of very mediocre form, then, you know, that certainly wouldn't reflect any value in his odds. You know, also we saw some first timers play really well there this week. So, you know, Ludwig obviously comes to mind. Looks like a future Masters champ right out the gates. And, you know, a guy like Adam Schenk never played there before and goes out and gets a return finish. So, you know, it's kind of a, you know, a give and take with that. But, you know, I agree with you. I mean, I think there are going to be guys that, you know, get the Masters respect going into the week and then just it doesn't materialize for them. And it's either because they had poor form or, you know, maybe this last week got on the wrong end of a draw. You know, that's always something that's a factor. You know, you got a bad tee time. You know, or maybe, you know, as we kind of see more and more years stack up, it's like, hey, this place isn't for them. So you got to take all those into account going into next year.
Along those lines, level of concern for Spieth.
Yeah, Spieth, boy, his putting's gotten back to where he kind of needed it to be. And then he was, you know, his ball striking, his driving was great in San Antonio, as he said. And then now his irons are just everywhere. So I don't know what to think with Spieth. Like, it feels more and more or less likely that he's going to get back to where he was, you know, 5, 6, 7 years ago. And him and Michael Greller have been such a good team for such a long time. And Michael's a friend of mine. You know, right. You wonder how that thing's going to play out over the next year or two. They're just such a tight-knit team. But Spieth seems to be getting in his own way a lot these days. And then when you look over your shoulder and you see guys like Scotty and other guys that are playing better than you, it makes your mind work double time to try to get it back.
We're talking with John Rathouz. He hosts the Quiet Please podcast here on Hurrdat Sports Network, also a former caddy. John, you know, so I'm watching some of your videos on Twitter as you're breaking down round by round, and you put one out talking about how round 3 you expected to see a lot more birdies. So kind of break it down for the Brooks Koepka type of the world like me, where I only show up for majors. Like, how are you evaluating that? Is it just weather condition? Is it hole play, like pin placement? Like, how are you looking at a round and being like, I think we're going to see a little lower scores today?
Right. Yeah, that's cool. Thanks for watching that. And I think people enjoyed it. I've really just done it for the Masters the last couple of years. When the pin sheet comes out, the morning of, I'd certainly like to lean on my experience there. I don't have a ton of experience, but had one nice run there back in 2009. And, we all know the pins there. And so I feel like I can kind of understand, shot value out there a little bit. And certainly then I try to mesh that with what the wind direction is forecasted to be. This week, the variable that I think I was a little bit late to the party on was just how firm the golf course was getting, especially after that first night's rain. So I feel like I was probably thinking there was going to be a few more birdies and eagles as the week unfolded. We saw more of that on Sunday, but the wind and the firm conditions just kind of limited that. But it's a fun exercise for me, just to kind of know as a caddy, kind of, hey, these are the ones where these guys are kind of yellow light, red light sort of situation, and these are ones where it's like you got to step on the gas. So I felt like I did a pretty good job evaluating it. And certainly, I think as people start to do some live betting more and more, or hole by hole betting, those sorts of things are insights that people certainly would appreciate.
Speaking on stepping on the gas a little bit, Colin Morikawa talked about how he felt the need to get a little more aggressive. He called it greedy in that final round because of the position Scheffler was putting him in. Did you think he actually made a misstep there, or that he just didn't execute the shots he needed to?
You can start with 8, obviously, with the triple.
Yeah. The execution certainly wasn't there for him. I think when I watched that tournament year after year, and I think you guys probably agree with me, and they say, hey, the Masters doesn't start until the second 9 on Sunday, and you really see that there's so many birdie opportunities on the second 9 that if you can kind of maintain touch with the leader, going to the turn, even if you're 3 or 4 back, sometimes you need some gifts from that leader, and nobody was getting any gifts from Scotty this last week. But you're still in the tournament. So I think these guys are kind of maintaining their game plan, maintaining discipline, and then they would start to kind of push it a little bit more when they get on that stretch on like 12, 13, 14, 15. And what happened yesterday, I felt like, is that timely birdie by Scott on number 9, right? And then Ludwig made that sick birdie putt from the second shelf or the top shelf down to there. So he kind of put himself in the mix. But then right there on like 10 and 11, and then Max on 12 is when the guys kind of like just faltered, when if they could have made pars there, they would have still been in touch to be able to make that move. And Ludwig kind of did a little bit. But yeah, Morikawa looked like he kind of was a little bit more deflated sooner than those other two, at least. And it didn't make for as exciting of a last, 7 holes, I'd say.
JR, I didn't want to be disrespectful, but I asked Ravi in the segment right to start the show with the reverence and the respect that we give Scheffler. Does it seem, would you have guessed that he's, and I say only, and I know what I'm saying because it's a lot, but it's at Augusta twice. But we've seen some other runs over a 3-year span where guys have won more majors. Is it his consistency of the top 10s that gets us to talk with the level of respect that we do? Because we've seen greater stretch runs, maybe not in the totality of career starts and consistency. Is that the difference? Or are you still in wait and see mode for Scheffler because you have seen at least some glimpses of this before?
Yeah, that's interesting. I don't think I'm really in wait and see mode with him anymore. I think, when he goes out and like proves his first major of the year, when he's the odds-on favorite, as you mentioned, like by a wide margin coming in, like not a very attractive bet, and he goes out and he closes the door, like, yeah, I think, man, he can really pile them up going forward this year. I mean, I saw someone threw 80 to 1 to win the Grand Slam on him. Now, like,
80 to 1. Oh, wow, already.
80 to 1 is what I saw. So, like, I mean, people, he's never going to match Tiger. Nobody will ever match Tiger because Tiger brings that extra bit of enjoyment in watching him. tons of golf respect for Scotty, the way he goes about it. Like, he's very true to himself.
Mm-hmm.
Not maybe as exciting of a guy to watch out there, at least in terms of his demeanor.
I joke
So
with
think
Ravi
that's
that he makes Dustin Johnson look loosey-goosey with his stroll. Like, he's just cooler than a fan, isn't he? Like, it's just like,
Yeah. He's super cool, and he's super consistent. And like I said earlier, with Ted Scott on the back, like, those guys are pretty hard to beat because they're just not going to make mistakes. And the last thing I was going to say when I kind of heard his press conference afterwards is that I think, DB, you would really agree with this. Is this guy hates losing.
Yep.
And when you've got good players that hate losing, that's the recipe for a big-time champion.
Preach.
John, great stuff. We appreciate it. I'm sure we'll catch up again soon.
Thanks, John.
Sounds good. Thanks for having me on.
That's John Rathouz from the Quiet Please podcast. That's the show for the day. We'll be back tomorrow.